Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Just a quick moment.
Wa alaikum salam.
Hey, thanks for joining, brother. See some stuff like this. That's some fire from Cheikh and Bamba. Especially if we got that on the back. That means we can't get this at a bookstore in America. You gotta have it hooked up. Or have to have a connection to the Sheikh to be able to do so. But this side is Asmaul Takhlil. And in Arabic or to Arabic to English, Asmaul Takhlil is the names of the Takhlil. And then the Takhlil is La ilaha illallah. So for a whole compilation of different variations of La ilaha illallah to exist in here, Sheikh Ahmed Bamba's way is founded on the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. So every single time that La ilaha illallah in any sentence form, structure, beginning or ending, as long as it's in there, is in this particular Qasa'id, which I thought was pretty fitting because, goodness, Imam al-Ghazali in chapter 2 goes straight into knowledge of God. He's not wasting no time in the book because it said in the Quran, like, he who knows himself shall know his Lord. And then chapter 1 in the book by Imam Ghazali was the knowledge of self. And then chapter 2 was the knowledge of God. Close book. That's it. That's the esoteric teaching right there. Meeting over. But we'll begin with a quick recitation of this. Allah, 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 zikr, to open it up, invite some angels in, and get into the chapter from Imam Ghazali on the knowledge of God to kind of build on the previous chapter on knowledge of self, which I think just got posted as well to Sheikh's YouTube. Alhamdulillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله وهو العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين وإلهكم إله واحد لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم ألف لام ميم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم هو الذي يصوركم في الرحمن كيف يشاء لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو ملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم الله لا إله إلا هو ليجمعنكم إلى يوم القيامة لا ريب فيه ومن أصدق من الله حديثا فلكم الله ربكم لا إله إلا هو الخالق كل شيء فاعبده وهو على كل شيء واكلون اتبع ما أوحي إليك من ربك لا إله إلا هو الأعرض عن المشركين قل يا أيها الناس إني رسول الله إليكم جميعا الذي له ملك السماوات والأرض لا إله إلا هو يحيي ويميت وآمنوا بالله ورسوله النبي الأمي الذي يؤمن بالله وكلماته وتتبعوه لعلكم تهتدون وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا إلها واحدا لا إله إلا هو سبحانه وما يشركون. Favorite part. لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم فإن تولوا فقولوا حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. وجوزنا بني إسرائيل البحر فأتبعهم فرعون وجنوده بغيا وعدوا حتى إذا أدركه الغرق كلا أنه لا إله إلا الذي آمنت به بنو إسرائيل وأنا من المسلمين. فإن لم يستجيبوا لكم فاعلموا أنما أنزل بالعلم الله وأن لا إله إلا هو فهل أنتم مسلمون. كذلك أرسلناك في أمة قد خلت من قبلها لتتلو عليهم الذي أوحينا إليك وهم يكفرون بالرحمن قل هو ربي لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وعليه متاب. ينزل الملائكة بروح من أمره على من يشاء من عبادي أن أنذروا أنه لا إله إلا أنا فاتقون. وإن تجهر بالقول فإنه يعلم السر وأخفى له لا إله إلا هو الأسماء الحسنى. إنني أن الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدوني وأقم صلاتي لذكري. إنما إلهكم الله الذي لا إله إلا هو وسع كل شيء علما وما أرسلنا من قبلك من رسول إلا يوحي إليه أنه لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدون وظنوني إذ حبا مغضبا فظن أن لا نقدر عليه فنادى في الظلمات أن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. تعالى الله ملك الحق لا إله إلا هو رب العرش الكريم. الله لا إله إلا هو رب العرش العظيم. وهو الله لا إله إلا هو له الحمد في الأولى والآخرة وله الحكم وإليه ترجعون. ولا تدع مع الله إلها آخر لا إله إلا هو كل شيء عاقل إلى وجه له الحكم وإليه ترجعون. يا أيها الناس اذكروا نعمة الله عليكم هل من خلق غير الله يرزقكم من السماء والأرض لا إله إلا هو فأنا تؤفكون. إن إنهم كانوا إذا قيل لهم لا إله إلا هو يستكبرون. خلقكم من نفس واحدة ثم جعل منها زوجها وأنزلنا لكم من الأنعام ثمانية أزواجا خلقكم في بطون أمها خلقا من بعد خلق في ظلمة فلكم الله that is Allah ربكم your Lord لا إله إلا هو الملك لا إله إلا هو فأنا تصرفون. اغفر لذنبي وقبل التوبة شهيد الله خابت التولي لا إله إلا هو إليه المصير. ذلكم الله ربكم خالق كل شيء لا إله إلا هو فأنا تؤفكون. هو الحي لا إله إلا هو فأتوه مخلصين له الدين الحمد لله رب العالمين. لا إله إلا هو يحيي ويميت ربكم ورب آبائكم الأولين فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا له واستغفر لذنبك وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات والله يعلم ما تقبلكم ومثواكم لا أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبال لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتكلمته نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو العلم الغيب والشهادة وهو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله خالق البارئ المصور له أسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم الله لا إله إلا هو الله الله فلا تخلق للمؤمنون رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا. Sort of a class to close it up. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين قل لا إله إلا هو وتفلحون. Say La ilaha illallah and be successful. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah, 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 la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallahu, la ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah alayhi salawatullah la ilaha illallah. Chapter 2, Knowledge of God. Imam Ghazali starts off kind of like Sheikh Bamba would, with a quick intro, and then right into a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or praise of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and then right back into finishing the opening, and then explaining how he's about to lead into splitting some atoms. But he starts off by quoting the Prophet Muhammad and saying that in regards to this knowledge of God, that it's a well-known saying by the Prophet Muhammad that he who knows himself knows God. You see how he kind of threw a hint at chapter 1 and chapter 2. This chapter 1 class from last Wednesday was the knowledge of self, and then chapter 2 goes directly into the knowledge of God. But because I was like, why is it this way? So that is contemplation of our own being and attributes that man is able to arrive at some knowledge of God. But since many who contemplate themselves don't find God, it follows that there must be some special way of doing so. It got to be a way to get from here to there, or like finally realize that I'm already there. I'm already there. Imam Ghazali says there's actually two that he goes through in the intro that he kind of just, cuts right to the point. And he says that one of them is so obtruse, meaning it's so odd that it's not adapted to ordinary intelligences and therefore is better left unexplained. Or what he's saying is that, hey man, brother down the street ain't gonna get that stuff, man. You get to talking about man and Allah are one to your neighbors. There's not to unless your neighbor starts talking about it. Alhamdulillah. But the other method, the not so obtruse method, because you get really deep in some of these esoteric teachings, and then you go back outside and realize that 85% of the people out there ain't really talked to about it. So the other method is I won't say a bit easier, but it comes off the same way as Sheikh Abdul delivers his teachings, backing up that teaching from Prophet Muhammad about he who knows himself knows his Lord, but then going to the Quran to find an example on like, well, what does Allah say in this book? Like, well, how did one of the prophets or messengers or one of the people in the book go about this? He says that when man considers himself, he knows that there was a time when he was non-existent, as is written in the Quran. Like, does it not occur to man to know that there was a time when he was nothing? Or nothing. Further, he knows that he was made out of a drop of water in which there was neither intellect, nor hearing, nor sight, nor head, nor hands. I'm not going to lift my feet up, y'all, but feet, etc., etc. But from that, it's obvious that whatever degree of perfection that this person might have arrived at, he didn't make himself. And even though he now knows this, he can't even create an extra piece of hair on his head. Ain't even. That verse in the Quran he was talking about is, do not the unbelievers see that the heavens and the earth were once joined together as one unit of creation before we clove them asunder. We made from water every living thing. Will they then not believe? So how much more helpless then was this particular example, this person's condition when he was just a drop of water? How was he then? Because we saw in the first chapter that he finds himself being reflected in miniature. He has certain degrees of attributes of Allah within himself, so to speak, like the power and wisdom and the love of the Creator embodied. You got to figure out how to go in there and find out where it is and how to bring it out. If all of the sages in the world, all the prophets and messengers in the world were assembled and their lives were prolonged for an indefinite time, they still couldn't affect any improvement to any single part of the human body or anything that the human body can experience. Right? So what he's saying is like, for example, if we had the lifespan of everyone in existence from Adam up until now, and we had those things prolonged an indefinite amount of time to the biggest number that the human mind can count to, we still wouldn't have enough time to fully study and contemplate and come to know the entirety of the creation of Allah. And even if we did, still would need just as much time, if not more, to even try to come to a conclusion that I can't do anything to improve it. Everything is perfect, right? Everything is perfect. Like, for instance, he says the, the adaptation of the front and side teeth to chew our food with, and then the construction of the tongue, the glands within, on top, and under the tongue that make saliva, which is really the first stage in digestion. The throat for directing it to a place where it's going to further digest it. We find just from here to here, mouth to gut, we find a system that's constructed in such a way that it doesn't matter what human does, he's not going to be able to improve on it. Similarly, whoever covers his hand with his 5 fingers of unequal lengths, because all of your fingers aren't even the same length at all, 4 of them with 3 joints, and the thumb only with 2, and in which the way that now we can use this thing called the hand for grasping and picking up things, or for carrying things, or for smiting, the stock for a lot, will frankly acknowledge that no amount of human wisdom could better it by altering the number and the arrangement of the fingers or the number of joints in any way possible. It's like when you get to a point of studying self and realizing certain intricacies about the human body, you realize that, hey, no matter how much of a fire scientist I am, bro, I can't fix none of it. I can't fix none of it, nor can I improve on any of it at all. Allah, bear with me just one quick moment. I have my aunt knocking at the door and is about to drop off some food, inshallah, which I'll throw in the kitchen. But I'll be right back in 2 shakes of a zicker bead. Inshallah. Alhamdulillah, for some vegetable soup, because I don't know where you guys are at, but it's about mid low 40s down here in middle Georgia, and we ain't used to that kind of cold. Of course, some vegetable soup definitely does good this time of year. Alhamdulillah and shukran for the patience there. Well, a quick recap on that last paragraph about realizing certain intricacies within the human body, right? That no matter what we do, even when you go have surgery to get certain things fixed with the body, like usually there's a part of the hip taken out and an artificial hip putting in. So like nothing was really fixed. So no matter how many elements that Allah has already created, no matter how much of those we take and try to put together to attempt to create a new thing with those new things, we still can't improve on better than the original design. The original design of this particular machine here. Imam Ghazali goes on to say that when a man further considers how his various wants for food, right, lodging, food, clothing, shelter, and things like that are greatly supplied from the storehouse of creation because it took wood and things that were already created to build this house. A person now becomes aware that God's mercy is as great as his power and his wisdom. As it said in the Quran, also, Allah says that my mercy is greater than my wrath. And according to the Prophet Muhammad saying, peace be upon him, he mentions that God, Allah, is more tender to his servants than a mother to her suckling child. Man considers his various wants for food and lodging. Like that's a whole nother system of self from chapter one to dive right back into and then come right back to this paragraph in chapter two to connect knowledge of self and knowledge of God, because he's making a connection to something that he said in the first chapter with this. And it's funny, I remember Sadhguru, Indian mystic or yogi, mentioning this in an example at a darshan event. Like I got up to the microphone finally to ask Sadhguru a question, and the question was, Sadhguru, my father recently passed, and you know I missed him so, and I just wanted to try to figure out ways to contact him. I never got a chance to have a last chat or talk with him. And the whole time while this guy is getting to and asking this question, Sadhguru was on the stage like this. You mean you want to contact someone that has exited the body? Because the person coughed when he was talking to Sadhguru. So he says, you mean you want to contact someone who has exited the body when you haven't attained full mastery of the body that you are in? Or you haven't mastered this machine yet, but you want to use this machine to try to contact someone that was once in a machine like yours that's no longer in it. Like, nicest way I think Sadhguru could have been like, bro, it's not how it works. It's not how any of it works. So he kind of breaks it to him like that. So the guy kind of has a now he's got him in a point of introspection. And then he just picks up a banana and says, if I peel this banana and I eat it, there's an automaton, there's something automatic going on the inside of this thing that's going to take this banana that I just chewed up into mush and swallowed. It's going to take the nutrients from that banana and it's going to extract it through this process that I can't even see going on. And it's going to send those nutrients to certain parts of my body. So parts of that banana are going to turn into a human or parts of a human. And whatever this automaton on the inside can't use to sustain this flesh spacesuit, let's just be real, whatever this thing can't use to maintain the body and life, it it craps it out on the backside. You flush it in the toilet or you use it as compost and continues the cycle. So just from the guy speaking and asking a question and coughing while asking the question, Dr. was like, they are eating like you are, you should, and working on a protein diet and not too sure how you got mucus with the type of spices and stuff the Indians use in their food, which is really good. But mm, just use it as an example to show knowledge of self and then knowledge of God, all within the same response to this guy's question. So from his own creation, Imam Ghazali says, and also what Sadhguru was getting this person in this Darshan event to see, is that from your own creation, you come to know God's existence. Message from the wonders of the body, its frame and its construction, and God's power and wisdom, from the ample provision made for his various needs and God's love. Like there's certain things that just happen on the inside of the body that you don't even have to do. Yeah, you do have to put food in it, but as soon as you put food in it, it's starting to get digested. As soon as you start to chew it and saliva hits it, you don't have to do anything else but just continue to chew it and swallow it. Alhamdulillah. You don't have to sit here and consciously follow the food down your throat. And as soon as it gets to your stomach, you don't have to then look at your stomach and say, okay, now stomach, digest food. You don't have to make that happen. Right? And this is what he's getting at. It's sometimes the smallest things that turn out to be the biggest things. You know, when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Just the fact that put food in this thing and the automaton that Allah put on the inside, it's really Allah is going to take the food that I put in this vessel to maintain, sustain, and in some cases heal this vessel, depending on what you put in it. And whatever it can't use, it gets rid of it to go back into the cycle again for some other being or entity to use it. It takes a mastermind to create a system like that. Man can't do it. Man can't do it. He is a reflection of the one who can, though. Man and woman are a perfect reflection of the one who can do it. Because not only are man's attributes a reflection of God's attributes, Imam Ghazali says, but the mode of existence that man and woman's soul affords them, it gives them some insight into the modes of God's existence. Does dolphin know Allah? I don't know. Those are smart animals, but like some of the animals that are, I guess, lower on the chain than human beings and the created beings on Earth have concepts of God. Does cow go to a cave, pick up charcoal, and draw a cow on the wall with wings and a halo? No, I don't think it does. But man, woman, we have the attributes that are a mirror reflection of the attributes of Allah. Our existence and what we do with it is what gives us insight on the existence of God and the existence of man, like we read in chapter 1 and 2 at the exact same time. That's to say that both God and the soul are both invisible and they're indivisible, right? They're unconfined by space, time, and outside of the categories of things like quantity and quality. The ideas of shape and color and size, width and mass, you just can't attach to them, to God, to Allah, and the soul. Because when you think about it, Allah is not bound by time, space, or matter. So if a person's God is bound by either of the three, time or space or matter, then I think that person might need to reevaluate this being that they're worshiping. If it's bound by time, space, and matter. This is why in Asmo Tahlil that we just read about 4.5 pages in, there's a Subhanallahi amma yushrikun. And that means glorified and exalted. Way higher up is Allah, above that, above all that they ascribe to him, or really anything that anything ascribe to him that's trying to associate a partner with him. You try, you can't. It's Allahu Akbar. It's the greatest. There's nothing equal to, next to at all. And Imam Ghazali says people find it hard sometimes. 85% of the people find it hard sometimes to form a conception of realities like that. Like, what do you mean God is beyond time and space and matter? But he was here 2,000 years ago and he was walking on the earth. God is bound by matter. God was in a stock for a while and go into the Christian Muslim thing. But people find it difficult to form that conception in their mind that how they may perceive this entity is not bound by time, space, and matter, and is devoid of stuff like quality and quantity. But when you look at it, Imam Ghazali says we get a similar difficulty that attaches to the conception of our everyday feelings. So the same way we're saying that the God and the soul are invisible, indivisible, unconfined by space, time, and matter, size, shape, color, the conceptions of our everyday feelings are also the exact same way. Because what color is anger? How big is it? How much does it weigh? And what shape is it? What color is pain? What shape is it? What's his favorite day to go to the park? What's pleasure's favorite color? What's pleasure's favorite food to eat? How big is pleasure? How much does pleasure weigh? Imam Ghazali says that they're all thought concepts, right? And they can't be cognized or they can't be cognitized by the senses. So quality, quantity, and etc. also sense concepts, invisible, indivisible, not confined by any of those things like time, space, matter, size, and whatnot. So when we try to conceive the ultimate realities, like God and the soul, self and God, we find ourselves in a region where sense concepts can't really play a part in anything. Imam Al Ghazali says, because so much, however, we can see that Allah is the ruler of the universe, and being himself beyond time, space, matter, quantity, quality, and things that govern what he created. All right, he's above those things that governs what he created. So also, since we're a reflection of this, the soul, the indwelling self, rules the body and its members. Itself is also invisible. Itself is also indivisible. Itself is not bound by things like how much does it weigh, what color is it. When you blow the wind at the self, does the self move? When you try to slice a sword through the self, does the self get chopped in half? Body might, like the samurai movies. But the self is not affected by any of those things at all. Just like how he went into the conceptualization of how glorified and exalted Allah is above those same things. The indwelling self that lies within us is not as like equal to or close to anything in regards to how far up Allah is above those things, but to the degree that we're able to embody them in the material plane, existing obviously lower material plane, spirit plane, ether plane, obviously existing lower. There's not much that we can do to get past that point that this indivisible thing is located within something that is also indivisible, if that makes sense. Imam Ghazali says, how can the indivisible be located in something that is divisible? Because if you were to break this thing down to its smallest constituent, like the smallest piece of it that makes it this thing as a whole, you come into an atom, and the atom is the basic building block of chemistry. We all We've got just the smallest unit into which matter can be divided without the release of the electronically charged particles and losing that force that holds all of them together in that same orbit. There's some thing holding them in that perpetual orbit around each other. But when you get to that atom, that basic building block, it's just the smallest that we can go without that that electronically charged particle or particles being just released or expounded upon. Now we'll go back to the book. Adam is the basic building block of humanity, right? It's the being or the entity that all other human beings were created from or after the prototype. The only being before Adam was Allah. Sheikh Sufi mentions it's impossible for me to be Allah, but it's not impossible for Allah to be or appear as me. That's the message. That's the connection between knowledge of self and knowledge of God, right there in one Sheikh Sufi quote. It's impossible for me to be Allah. Like me, just me. Nobody else, just me. I'm Allah. That's impossible. Right. But it is not impossible for Allah to be or appear as me. It's not impossible for Allah to be and appear as every single thing that has appeared and has eyes to see can see. Because la ilaha illallah, there's no other being in existence. But from all that, like we finally wound up seeing how I won't say we finally wound up seeing, but some people can see how true the saying of the prophet is, and it's even in the Bible when it says that Allah, God, created man in His own likeness and image. What time we got? That part. God created man in His own likeness and image. That word image, I mean, it kind of means image. When you get to the esoterics of ism, that word right in the middle of Bismillah, uh, Ism Allah, energy, Ism manifest as, or in the image of, or in the likeness of Ism Allah, manifest in the image of Allah. So begin all things with Bismillah, begin all things as if you are moving in the perfect mirror reflection of Allah to the best of your capability. Like Shakespeare mentions, it's a lot of practices in the WhatsApp groups. There's a lot of zikrs in the videos. Shakespeare got zikrs and weirds and the majority of all of his books, if you get them online or look at the PDFs. But that doesn't mean read all of those books every day. Read every single qasa'id that's in the groups every day. Do all of the zikrs, every single one of them to the highest number every day. But, do what you're able to do at the degree that you're able to do it at. Right? And when you get to a point where you're proficient with that particular practice, then we work towards an increase, and then we polish up that mirror so that that light can reflect, that image can reflect. So now we can actually embody these attributes and literally be out here moving in the likeness and in the image of Allah, or in the likeness and the image of God, because we're manifesting these attributes and we're manifesting them, right, from ourselves. Because once you polish that heart up and that light gets to radiate out, Nur Allah Nur. So all of the 99 names of Allah are dormant inside the human being. And the method of awakening them or realizing them is through dhikr, right? Dhikr or remembrance. When you remember and you make sure you keep the members together again, you remember again. And when you put it together, I'm putting super glue on all the joints this time and concrete and cement and everything. None of these pieces are falling apart again. As long as you keep the remembrance going, they don't fall apart, and you continue to build that spiritual edifice with those names of Allah as your building blocks to this inner man, this inner self. That's really the reflection. So Imam Ghazali says now, as we arrive at some knowledge of God, Allah's essence and attributes from the contemplation on the soul, its essence and attributes, we come to understand Allah's method of working and governing and delegating powers to angelic forces and etc. by observing how each of us governs our own little kingdom. So to take like a simple instance, suppose that a man wants to write the name of Allah. He wants to write it. Alif, Lam, Lam, Ha, Ha, La, La, Shata, Fata, and accent marks. I want to write the name Allah. But first, the wish for me to write the name of Allah had to be conceived in my heart. And from there, there's a connection from here, the heart, to the brain, which is conveyed by the vital spirits, the ancestors, attributes, powers. You can describe them, but they're taken from here to here, and then the form of the word of the name Allah takes shape in the thought chambers of the mind, in the brain, and by the nerve channels that go all throughout the body, they come down just to these two, so I can go and write the name Allah. It sets in motion, starts here, here, through the nerve channels and down to the pen to write the name Allah. Sets in motion the fingers. It, like that, it is that indwelling self, it's that inner man or man. And now the name Allah has been written down on paper exactly as it was conceived in the person's mind. Flip. Similarly, when Allah wills a thing, it appears in the spiritual plane. When you want to write the name Allah on paper, it's conceived in your heart. Now, when Allah does this, it appears in the spiritual plane, which in the Quran is called the throne or the arsh. Right? From the throne or the arsh, it passes by a spiritual current to a place called the chair, the kursi, to a place called the chair. And then the shape of it takes place on the tablet of destiny, or just like on our end, when we had the intention here and it gets up here, it appears in the thought chambers. Mirror reflection of how it's done with Allah. The shape of what is about to be created appears on the tablet of destiny. Before it's even created, it's already written. As soon as Allah said, there it is. Whence by the meditation of the forces called angels, it assumes actuality and it appears on the earth in the form of planets and trees and animals or human beings, representing the will and the thought of Allah. As just like the written letters on the paper represent the wish that I conceived in my heart that was conveyed to my brain by the vital spirits that took place in the thought chambers of the brain and then traveled from there all the way through the nerve channels and then set in motion my fingers to write the name of Allah. So the throne that he mentions in the Quran is mentioned as al-Arsh, right? Wa huwa Rabbul Arshil Azim, or the Kursi, the way that Imam Ghazali is explaining it here to make the connection between, Allah and this indwelling nur of Allah, this light of Allah that exists within me and you and everyone else that's going to watch the video afterwards. the cortice can be seen as or represented as the brain and the nerve channels that send the signal to inscribe a thing. First off, they're already inscribed in the nerve channels to go to another place. So they're already written before they're written in the law or Marfus or the preserved tablet. And of course, there's four angels holding up the throne of Allah. You got four chambers in your heart. uh, Imam Ghazali mentions that no one can understand a king but a king, therefore, that Allah has made each of us a king or a queen in miniature, so to speak, over a kingdom that is an infinitely reduced copy of its own. So it's big and glorified and exalted as Allah is above anything that we can conceive, way up at that level. If we were able to direct that inward with as much intensity and fervency with the practice and get on the path, we'll be able to realize that, wait a minute, the kingdom of man in God's throne is represented by the soul. I got one of those. Wait, and the archangel by the heart, because of course there's four of those. I got four. Wait a minute. The chair by the brain, of course. Lahuma fi samawati wa ma fil ard. The tablet by the treasure chamber of thought. If you close your eyes and picture Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba in front of you, who are you going to see? Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, Jidija. Because this soul or this self that is also unlocated and indivisible, like he mentioned a few paragraphs up, it governs the body in the exact same way as Allah governs the boundless universes. So in short, and each of us is entrusted with a little kingdom, and we're charged not to be careless in the administration of it and the upkeep with it. Like so Ibn Maryam pointed it out plenty of times in the Bible. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Don't say, look for the kingdom of heaven in the sky or in the sea, because the birds will beat you to the sky and the fish are going to beat you to the sea. But the one place that you can't technically look outward at is the one place where we actually need to look to try to find, and will find if you seek the kingdom of heaven, because it is within. Now, I hope nobody in here is a doctor, because even Imam Ghazali kind of does a bit of a comparison between philosophers and physicians, right? One would think that they don't line up, right? Or astronomers and physicians, philosophers and physicians, and how they look at things, and they look at the cause or the underlying potentiality that would cause a thing to be. So we get exoteric and esoteric. But he mentions, as regard to the recognition of Allah's providence, there are many degrees, many. There are many degrees of knowledge. He didn't put a number, just many. Just keep counting. The mere physicist or the doctor is like an ant who, crawling on a sheet of paper and observing black letters spread out all over this sheet of paper, would think that the pen that's floating above the piece of paper is what actually put those black lines on the piece of paper that it can't get around. The astronomer also, he says, is like an ant, but the astronomer is like an ant of a wider vision, because he's one who will catch the sight of the fingers moving the pen. He won't just be, from the bottom looking up and just see this gigantic pen. He's an astronomer. He's looking deeper past what he sees immediately, and he sees fingers holding this pen, and those fingers attached to a hand. So now he knows that in his case, in his job, what he does as an astronomer, He knows that the elements are under the power of the stars, but doesn't quite know that the stars are under the power of the angels. Because it's an astronomer, I'm not too sure how esoteric some of the astronomers get into all of that, but we owe that difference in degrees of perception in people. Imam Ghazali says that when you put those two side by side and you try to make them understand each other, disputes are going to arise in tracing effects to causes, because the ant that's crawling around on the paper looking at these big black lines, and he sees this ginormous pen tip coming down. He can't even see the hands, is just trying to break down creation, because this line was just created. It's breaking down creation based off of the tip of a pen. Imam Ghazali is making this connection, but the astronomer is taking this telescope. The astronomer is also an ant, but the astronomer is taking this telescope and is looking deeper past that point of the pen, and he's looking deeper into that space to see what I have to be able to see something. Something has to be controlling this pen. Something has to be controlling the pen. Right? So the astronomer winds up going a little bit deeper and sees it. But when you put that astronomer and that ant side by side, the ant's going to try to say that no, the tip of that pen is the God that created these letters. But the astronomer is going to say, no, 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 you just can't see it. There's a hand. There's a hand holding that pen up there, and it's writing it. So what language does the person that's holding that pen speak? We don't disputes, disputes. It says those whose eyes never see beyond the world of phenomena are like those who mistake servants of the lowest rank for a king, because the laws of phenomena must be constant, or else there would be no such thing as science. But it is a great error to mistake the slaves for the master. Laws of phenomena must be constant, or else there could be no such thing as science. So that could be that's it right there. The laws of these phenomena have to be in existence in order for them to even be able to be studied or debated by the ant and the astronomer. And all of those things that exist, whether they can be seen or not, to create those things are being controlled by a being or entity that cannot be seen unless you get up and look in the mirror and then look at yourself and start. But as long as there's a difference in like the perceptive faculty of observers, and as long as that exists, they say, he says, disputes must necessarily go on. It's like if some blind men hearing that an elephant that came to their town, I know we've heard that Sufi story said a couple of different ways, and everyone goes to go eat this elephant. First off, how does the blind man go to go see the elephant? But they only had knowledge of it from what they could obtain through the sense of touch. So, like one touches the elephant's leg, and another one touches the tusk, and another one touches the elephant's ear. And according to their various perceptions of this one big thing that they can't see, but all of them just touched. One of them says that nope, it's a column. It's a big column. No, it's a thick pole. It's a really thick pole. No, no, no. This flappy thing is a quilt. No, this flappy thing is a quilt, and then they don't see that it's just a leg and a stalk fertile. They're blind. A stalk fertile. Of course, they don't see, but it's a leg and a tusk and the ear. They take a part for the whole, instead of realizing that these parts are connected to the other part that the other person is also touching, making a connection from Yahweh to Yahuwah, or Elohim to Allahumma. Because once you see it's just a linguistic difference, is that really a different God now? Elo, Lamaba, Sabachthani. They said Jesus, peace be upon him, was to have cried out on the cross, Ela, Ela, Lamaba, Sabachthani. But if we were to go a few miles south, right, and say the exact same thing in a Southern Arabic language, instead of getting ila, ila, you would get Allah, Allah. So the exact same if we get a little bit deeper past the surface. So this physicist and the astronomer, they both kind of confound the laws that they perceive the person that gives the laws. Because we're trying to take these laws as concrete things and then saying, yes, just based on the study of this thing, also that's outside of myself, I now know the entity that created it all. This physicist is studying other people's cells, and the astronomer is studying things that aren't even on this floating. Stop for a lot of me. Phone call come in, but I'll call the brother back. Class here. Now, he compares this physicist and the astronomer, or the ant and the astronomer, essentially one studying things that he can see and kind of almost touch, and the other studying things that are far beyond the things that he can touch. He he mentions that there's a similar mistake attributed to Ibrahim in the Quran, and astaghfirullah. It's a linguistic thing, so we'll explain that because there's no mistakes in the Quran. But I say a similar mistake is attributed to Abraham in the Quran, right? That's the key word. A similar mistake is attributed to Abraham in the Quran, where it's related that he turned successively to the stars and then to the moon and then to the sun as his objects of worship, right? Until he kind of grew a little bit more aware of the fact that there was a being that created all of these things, because he wound up coming to this conclusion as saying, I love not these things that set. The stars show up when it's dark, and when it's daytime, I can't see them. They're still there, but like I can't see them. At nighttime, I can't see the sun. I can see a reflection of it, but I can't see it. But and in the daytime, depending on where I'm at, I may or may not even be able to see the moon. Right. And Imam Ghazali mentions when he says a similar mistake is attributed to Abraham in the Quran. If we put what Abraham, peace be upon him, is called in Arabic, the Hanif, right? He's called that the Hanif, or the righteous, or the true believer in Arabic. But if we go back like a language and a half to like Aramaic and Syriac, the word Hanif is pronounced a bit different. It's Hanifa, right? Still the same root letters. It's just, pronounced a little bit quicker and close together. But in current Arabic today, which shows the correction that Hanif means the righteous one or the true believer, but in Syriac, Hanifa, Hanifa meant an idolater. It meant like a pagan or a disbeliever, because to frame it all, we know the story of Ibrahim coming to the understanding of Tawheed in a society full of people who pray to Lord knows how many other gods, right? So to the people in that society who were well used to praying to astaghfirullah, 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 whatever, to them, Ibrahim, peace be upon him, was a pagan. To the pagans, Ibrahim was a pagan essentially, because he was like, no, one there's one God. There's one God. I can't even show the source of that God to you. But if you were to study yourselves and everything else in creation, you will come to the conclusion and have a bit more knowledge of this God that I'm trying to teach about in this example with Ibrahim. So for them to say that, oh, Ibrahim in Syriac is a hunter or an idolater, no, that was just based on the people's perception of that time. because the people's perception of that time, they were in the well before Jahiliyyah. Lord knows how many gods they were praying to and doing whatever, but to people who had been doing that for you know ages and ages and ages, when they see someone that comes with something different and just like, oh, there's just one God, to them that's blasphemy. So when he mentions there's a similar mistake attributed to Abraham in the Quran, this is why, because the mistake is attributed because of the perception of the people that were saying Ibrahim was the pagan, or saying Ibrahim was the idolater, but Ibrahim was the righteous. He was the true believer because he didn't get caught up in all of the manifest things and like this leaf reminds me of one thing. So this leaf is going to be God. I'm going to put this leaf on an altar and I'm going to pray to it and do obeisance to it. I'm not going to try to figure out what created the tree that I pulled the leaf off of. So this is how Ibrahim is compared to those people in that time. And why, if you do read through chapter 2 in this book, don't get startled when you see Imam Ghazali say a mistake is attributed to Abraham in the Quran. It's only because of a linguistic difference and just kind of a common error and viewpoint between people who are used to being what we call a pagan today, and to them what they would understand as a pagan. But what we understand is someone who has a bit more universal knowledge about the truth of reality. Alhamdulillah. More page on this one here. He mentions that in regards to that that difference, the humans have a common instance of referring to the second cause, all right, of what should have been called the first cause of whatever kind of illness, whatever kind of distraction, etc. If a man ceases to take interest in any worldly matters, thinks of or conceives a distaste for common pleasures, like he withdraws from all worldly matters, but he withdraws so far into those regressions from worldly matters that he eventually develops a taste or a distaste for like common pleasures, and then he appears to be sunk in depression. He says the doctor is going to say this is a case of melancholy. This person requires such and such prescription, but if a person were to take extreme disinterest in worldly matters and a distaste for common pleasures and then appear to be sunk in depression, the physicist is going to look at him and say, well, no, this is a dryness of the brain caused by the hot weather, and it cannot be relieved until the air becomes moist or the person changes his diet so that his inner workings will adapt. But the same person who's extremely withdrawn from the world so far to where regular stuff don't even taste good to him anymore, and he appears sunk in depression, the astrologer is going to attribute it to some kind of conjunction of planets. So this planet and that star are within this degree of each other. So the influences from this planet on this day at this particular time is why your stomach hurts today. All right. So what you have to do is talk a lot. What did you eat yesterday? That's why your stomach hurts. But thus far, their wisdom reaches, it says in the Quran. That's where the knowledge stops at. So this doctor that sees the same person says that he's experiencing melancholy, and the physicist sees the same person and tries to equate it to something going on by the weather and a imbalance between the outside and inside. And the astrologer studies a person to try to figure out what's wrong and then attributes it to a conjunction of certain planets. Imam Ghazali says it doesn't occur to them that what had really happened is this: that Allah the Almighty has a concern for the welfare of that man, right? And has therefore commanded his servants, if they want to look at it that way, the servants or the planets or the elements to produce such a condition in this man so that he may turn away from the world and to Allah. There's a point where it can be extreme, and in some cases really getting away from society is needed. But We do things within the proper balance because we don't tip the mizan or don't tip the scales like they say in Surah Rahman. Make sure everything is balanced. Don't go too hard. Right? Don't eat the whole elephant in one sitting. Meal prep that thing. Chop it up, put it in some Tupperware. For a lot. The knowledge of that fact, he says, is a lustrous pearl from the ocean of inspirational knowledge, from which all other forms of knowledge are as islands in the sea. So the place where all of that came from, he didn't even describe, but he started with the place and the being and the entity. He started with Allah and then to Allah's creation. The doctor, his physicist, and the astrologer, they're both doubtless, or they're both right in each of their particular branches. So he's saying, but they don't see that the illness is so to speak, a, a, a cord of love, he says, by which Allah draws himself to the person concerning whom he said, I was sick and he visited me not. Illness or pain, discomfort, themselves are forms of experience. Stinks sometimes, but they're forms of experience by which man arrives at a proper knowledge of Allah, as he says by the mouth of his prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Sicknesses themselves are my servants and are attached to my chosen. Almost just like the Bifal viewpoint on waking up and having too good of a day. Like Bifal wakes up and there's not one single test and trial. Probably gonna look up and Ya Allah, like why have you not inflicted me with tests and trials today? There's something that I need to work hard at and get over and get stronger at, better at, and more efficient at. And if something don't happen for me to experience whatever it is that I know you have for me, bring it to me because I know if I get over it, y'all, you're going to be there with me. And when we get to the apex of it, you're going to be there too. When we get to the other side and I realize how stronger I've gotten by overcoming this obstacle, you're going to be over there too. We must go through some things in order to arrive at the thing that caused the occurrence. Now, the last few parts here we'll skip a bit forward because he goes into a pretty long discourse on the seven stations of the soul after kind of leading into them and still speaking about the doctor, the physician, the ant, and whatnot. But he starts off with the knowledge of them about people who transgress the limits that are imposed on us are the people who wrong their own soul, as it's written in the Quran, or seventh station of the soul. Uh, First station, the nafs samara. This is a manifestation of the animal soul in man. Right? The soul incited to do evil. So to get from there to this knowledge of God, there's six other stations for the person to wind up getting through. So there are the nafs lawama, when a man winds up hearing the voice of his conscience and then he tries to resist carnal passions and desires. Like some people believe in God, Allah, some people believe in the future, but they do so with a weak belief. They say things like, oh, yeah, Allahu Akbar. I mean, God is great. Like, God is big. God is this and God is that. But he's independent of us. Like, our worship and not doing this or not doing that, doesn't, it's just indifferent. It's indifferent to Allah. But in that state of mind, this particular person is spiritually sick. Very how could a person say such a thing? If I follow the practices, if I follow the Quran and Sunnah, or if I don't, like, what is it? What does it matter? No, stop for loud. The person listens to that that voice that's saying that and realizes that it doesn't sound like him. Like, what is this thing telling me to do this or stop doing these practices? that I know I don't need to listen to. All right. I'm listening to the voice of my conscience tell me to not listen to that carnal passion and that desire. And when a person does so, he gets to the next station of the soul, the nafs mulhima, when he receives direct instructions through the jelly manifestations through manifestations from Allah. Like it says in the Quran, only those shall be saved who come to Allah with the sound heart, because that's where this next connection is. Because the fourth, the nafs mutmaina, when the self is freed of self indulgence and it finds a peace and a tranquility in the state of balance and piety and obedience to his now higher self, because he's went over three of the lower stations of the soul and has now gotten to the fourth, the heart. Now, nafs radia, right afterwards, if we're able to move on up again, is when man accepts all that happens to him uh, in creation, period. Whether I'm having a melancholy day based on what that doctor says, or I need this because of what that physician says. No, no, no. I accept all that happened to me without any resentment, without any pain. And when good and bad become equal to me, I'm I'm now pleased with what's coming from Allah. Like, I still have photo of this picture when the accident when I was rear ended. The first thing I wound up doing is realizing, bro, you can't act like a NIGGA on the side of the interstate, right? Because listen to the higher self, and then I already was a step ahead of the it hit my car, so it was already a step ahead. And what did that voice say? Thicker. There's a picture of me walking from the back of my wrecked car to the truck of the person that hit me with my zikr beads in my hand, holding on to the rope, right? Holding on to the rope. Yep, just got rear and it probably gonna hurt tomorrow. Car's totaled, but I'm moving. I can get out of the car. I can go walk and check on it. But Alhamdulillah, and that's the zikr. Alhamdulillah. I don't know how many times it was repeated, but at that point, that that particular point, that accident was not necessarily good nor bad. It was an accident. The guy didn't mean to do it. He might have been looking somewhere else, didn't pay attention. But I saw him get out of the truck perfectly fine. His son got out of the truck perfectly fine. His truck's messed up. My car's messed up, but I got out perfectly fine. My passenger got out perfectly fine. The other lady whose bumper got scraped got out perfectly fine. Her dog was perfectly fine. And the baby that was in the car was perfectly fine. They didn't even feel the impact. They just got scraped. So all of those things started to just crumble away at that point, because you realize that, yep, it's an accident, but everybody that was involved in the accident is still here. We experienced it, and all three of the people involved said something similar. I'm just thankful to God that it wasn't worse. Or the first thing I did was say, praise God. I'm just so thankful because at that point they realized, hey man, yeah, I can get the car fixed. Somebody else might look at that as bad, but now I look at it as good because everybody else got out of it. But I mean, was it really good like to have an accident to then turn around and say something good afterward? It was just an accident. It happened, and it was an experience, and everybody that was involved in it learned something, and then continued to live their life. Alhamdulillah. Right. So the last two stations of this soul on this process is now after you're that pleased with things that happen. Nafs mardia is when man assumes the divine attributes, leaving the materiality. He's gotten to a point where these passions, the materialism, nafs hawa dunya shaitan, those are they're taken care of to the degree that they're supposed to be taken care of. You never really cut yourself off, but you do keep yourself in proper balance so that none of the incorrect vibrations try to rise up on this path that you just went through purification to get up from this lower self to this higher self, which is a connection to God. And this is where the knowledge of God exists. Right here in that connection between our most high self and the most high above us. And when we're able to make that connection, sixth station of the soul, sixth chakra, Nafsmardia, when we assume the divine attributes, when we have the names of Allah up here from reciting them in dhikr and we've embodied them, the names of Allah are moving through our body, through those same nerves, through those same sense channels, to a point to where when you wake up in the morning after reciting 787 Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, I'm pretty sure by the way it's programmed, first thing that's going to be done when you got up is going to be something positive in the name of Allah. And it's going to have a certain feeling of grace and mercy, whether it's you feeling the grace and mercy from the blessing Allah gave you, or you extending that to someone else. And now when there's that perfect union and that perfect harmony, when we've gone through this process and realized that we get Nafs Kamalia, where man reaches the purity of perfect harmony. People at that state don't really look at the good or the bad. They do exactly what they know that they're supposed to do because they're embodying those traits. There isn't a good nor a bad, a up or down, a left or a right. There's just doing and being in the exact way that we're out to be. And if we follow Cheikh Nubama's teachings, because those come from the Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, we'll bump into other scholars like Imam Ghazali along the way, where we can compare teachings, we can strengthen ourselves, can sharpen the scimitar to cut off the head of them poor enemies, and get step by step closer on that seven rung ladder from Nafs Amara, lowest station of the soul, all the way up to Nafs Kamalia to reach the purity of perfect harmony of man and Allah being one. So with this, we come to a connection of the beginning of chapter 1 with a knowledge of man, knowledge of self, and chapter 2, knowledge of Allah. Ghazali breaks it down pretty deep, but does anyone have any questions at all? We'll open the floor for a quick moment, inshallah. A reset. As always, alhamdulillah for the participants. I pray there was something that was said and noted in the book, footnotes, inspirations, comparisons from the text that were used to put everything together that was fulfilling. If there are questions at all, there's a couple of lines of a Qasad that I'll recite to close everything with. Rabbi Karimum, uh, Rabbi Karimum Wasiun Wayu Fadilu, or Rabbi, our Lord Karimun is the most generous, is generous. Wasiun is vast and expansive, meaning everywhere. And Yufadilu, the preferred, because if we're a mere reflection of Allah, Allah has 99 names, attributes, and traits. We have the capability of mirroring those 99 in our person to have those exact same preferred qualities. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله وهو العلي العظيم. الفاتحة. First, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ربي كريم واسع ويفاضل وواسلتي لعبد لديه مفاضل. ربي كريم واسع ويفاضل ووسيلتي عبد لديه مفاضل. ربي كريم واسع ويفاضل ووسيلتي عبد لديه مفاضل. ليكي وفاك فباسهم مهن للمصطفى من صدقه يا يجدل. يا ربي صل على الحبيب محمد وآل وأصحاب من خالفوا دلو. يا ربي صل على الحبيب محمد وآل وأصحاب من خالفوا دلو. يا ربي صل على الحبيب محمد وآل وأصحاب من خالفوا دلو. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام 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 على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. These and all great lessons from the Cheikh Bamba Sufi School brought to us from Cheikh Bamba, Barkay, Sittering Tuba, 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 Barkay, Sittering Tuba. I mean, until next Wednesday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Chapter 3 will be on knowledge of this world, knowledge of self, knowledge of Allah, knowledge of this world. May we all go forth and be successful in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, Cheikh. Salam, family. Thank you, Cheikh.
Wa alaikum salam, family.